I used 12 pencils to do this hyper-realistic drawing, and the challenge is I can only use these 12 pencils throughout the whole entire drawing.
And starting off with the skin tones, I was basically only using red, green and blue, some browns, whites and blacks. As you can see with the image on screen, it's a really colourful reference, and that's why I picked it. I knew it would be very challenging. And as I got more confident with the skin tones, it definitely got a lot easier. Moving on to the left arm, it was a lot easier than the right, since it was a lot more in shadow and it just consisted of mainly blacks, whites, blues and greens. And I moved on to the left because I was getting a bit tired of the right. I said I'd finish the left first before moving back to the right with a bit more confidence and with fresher eyes. Moving on to the upper part of the forearm, it was a small bit more difficult because it was a bit lighter in colour, so I really had to try bring out the skin tone highlights a bit more. And moving on to the head, once I had the arm kind of 90% finished, I was very confident with controlling the colour and trying to achieve the colour I wanted and making it look like the reference as much as I could. So after the final touches on the head, I was pretty pleased with how the skin tones turned out, and it was finally time to move on to the second part of the drawing, which was the clothing. So I didn't really have the colours for the clothing, so approaching this was a small bit different to the skin tones. So I started off with a light layer of white, adding blues, greens, and outlining the red stripes and the Jordan N23 in red, and slowly adding more tones of different colours into the drawing. And basically I kept repeating that process over and over and over until I was happy with how the colours looked like. The tank top turned out pretty well. I was pretty happy with that. The shorts were a bit darker, so it wasn't much different, but once I got the hang of it again, it was pretty straightforward and it was probably the easiest part of the drawing. And it was time to move on to the background, which was step 3. I started with the most detailed part of the drawing, which was the hoop. The hoop and the backboard and the background in general was probably the hardest part of the drawing. The backboard consisted of nearly all 12 colours that I had, and it was really a patience game of me taking my time and trying every colour to create the colour of the background, because there was a slight yellow glow on the under half of the backboard and there was the main light source then on the left top of the backboard. The background only consisted of black and blue and some light I would call spotlights. As you can see, they're kind of brown and yellow in the background and they really add the details. They're also in the reference, so I didn't add them in myself. And if you're wondering the technique I used for the background, since I didn't have a dark blue, I was just layering black and the blue that I had together. As you can see, I put down the layer of blue first, then I added the black over, and I continued that process over and over until the background was smooth. So finishing up with the top half of the background, I added the final details to the backboard and to the blue and black and the spotlights before moving on to the bottom left half of the drawing. And since I already had the technique down from doing the top half, the bottom left was pretty straightforward with blues and blacks and a small bit of spotlight. Over on the right, it was a bit more complicated. The background was pretty much the same technique, but I had a face on the bottom right. For the face, I just wanted to suggest that it looked like a face. It was extremely small and trying to get actual details of a face was close to impossible. I tried to make it as dark as possible, so it blended into the background as much as I could, and it was pretty similar to the reference. I'm doing the final touches before moving on to the face because it was somewhat difficult to make it look good and keeping it similar to the reference, like I said. But once I had the final touches done on the rest of the drawing, I completed the face. I was happy enough with it. It was time to make the drawing look like an original Polaroid, which was the goal from the beginning. It was just an idea that I had and I wanted to do, and I wanted to try it out, see if I could make it look like a Polaroid because I really liked the reference. So adding the final details to the drawing of his signature and making the Polaroid white, I think I did as good a job if I had all my art supplies compared to only using 12 pencils. Let me know on how you think I did in the comments. I think I did a pretty good job. Of course, I love myself. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below on how you think I did. Please comment.